This is the Valley Run Podcast from the ministry of Rocky Mountain Church in Estes Park, Colorado. Whether you're making your valley run for groceries, kids' games, or just need to get out of town, we pray today's message encourages you to elevate your awe for Christ in all things. Online at RockyMountainChurch.com. Here's your host, Pastor A.J. Dudek.
Well, hey, welcome to another episode of Valley Run Podcast. Pastor AJ here. Today we have a great episode. If you've got kids that are athletes, you're going to want to pay attention to this one. We're going to be talking with a good friend of mine, Ryan Borowitz, and Ryan runs a basketball training facility called The Driveway. He's got 2 locations in the state of Wisconsin. And just a little bit about Ryan. Ryan and I met years ago, actually around the activity of fly fishing. We spent a lot of time doing that together over the years. But Ryan specifically is a sought-after shooting coach and played professional ball overseas in Australia. He's worked with Athletes in Action, a ministry that has teams that travel the world. And over the past 15 years, he's really specialized in working with kids. And he's trained over 30,000 basketball players, specializing in shooting techniques and skill development. And he's got a huge commitment in helping athletes improve their game. And it's really goal-oriented. That's what we're talking about today, the idea of setting goals. How does that apply in our life? How do we be more strategic about that? And this month we're talking about formation. We're developing skills. We're looking at disciplines in our lives as Christians. And I'm super excited to have Ryan on the show. So let's bring him on. Thanks again for joining us on the Valley Run Podcast. What has been your best or your favorite Estes Park memory?
I've been there a few times with you, so
yeah, I know.
I think just being in the park is kind of a cool experience. Any town in the mountains for me is heaven. It's just, there's a vibe that you know of, and I could live there for sure and visit often. But I think like cruising the canyon, looking for spots, that's fun. It's, I don't know. I couldn't pinpoint one thing. You and I took that group out there a couple times, so those were fun experiences. Different than like family vacation kind of things. But I'd say that it's always fun to just cruise the canyon and look for, okay, where am I going next? Where are they sitting at? How am I going to get to them? Water's high. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
It's such a pretty area. And I love that area.
Well, I'm going to be fishing it on Thursday afternoon, hopefully. So
really?
Water's super low,
really?
But they're eating tons of midges right now. So it'll be fun. Mainly nymphing, not a lot of dry fly fishing, but I drive it most every day, and it's just a cool place with a lot of good memories. And I know you and I have shared some good ones over the years. So it's awesome. Today we're talking about this idea of goal setting, Ryan. As a friend of yours, I've watched you over the years accomplish some really cool things. If you were to rewind the tape a little bit and remember the first time when you started thinking of setting goals for yourself, when did that mentality start for you, primarily as an athlete?
Yeah, I would say definitely athletically. I always wanted to play college basketball, so I would say that became serious to me in probably 7th or 8th grade. I remember sitting down with my dad, and he kind of asked me, like, how good do you want to be? And I remember I was watching a game on TV, and I said, I want to play Division I college basketball. We had the Phoenix in town, and so it was easy to look at that and go to every game and say, I want to do that. And knowing, okay, to do that, it's not going to just happen. I'm not going to be 6'10". Like, there's nothing physically special about me. I'm going to have to work really, really, really hard. So I think, that that goal initially was always something I really wanted, and didn't know if it was going to happen or not, but just kept working as if it was going to, and it had no choice.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of the first time that I really felt like that's the thing. And I wouldn't say I've always been like nail the goal to the wall and put really, always have a specific goal. I think the kind of innate thing that God put inside of me was to just work really hard and be able to focus and concentrate and just keep doing it when other people get sick of it and bored of it. And so I think
Yeah.
even in professionally in the different jobs that I've had too, like when things are tough or boring or people want to move on, I'm able to just put my head down and keep going. And
Yep.
that's, I think a lot of that is God given. A lot of that is, my parents instilling in me hard work and that kind of thing, and watching them do their thing for years. And then just being willing to do what other people aren't willing to do.
Yeah, it's interesting when when you first took me to the original driveway location, you talked to me about how you came up with the name, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about that, what inspired you to name it the driveway? I mean, I know, but
Yeah.
how did you connect the dots mentally with calling it that?
Well, there was really only one name. Like I never had like a list of names I was going to call it. It was that. And when I thought of it, when I realized, when I decided I wanted to have a facility, that was the name. So there wasn't even a second option. And I
Yeah.
think it clicked, it's got a cool ring to it, but also like I spent so much time. We lived in two different houses when I was growing up until about sixth grade. We lived in one house and then we moved just, a couple miles down the road. In those
Yeah.
two driveways, I mean, I spent just an inordinate amount of time, way more than in a gym,
Yeah.
and just all hours of the day, didn't matter the weather, just shooting and just
Yeah.
imagining playing against great players. And like I said, that's where kind of that, I didn't get bored of it. Like I just would keep doing it. And over time, then you kind of refine your workouts and you get a little more purposeful. But if you
Right.
just spend so many hours,
Just
and
hours.
the 10,000 hour rule, I love that concept. I know some people kind of trash on it, but I don't know. It makes sense to me. And especially once it becomes more focused, for me, it was high school. It certainly got more focused, but,
Yeah.
and we had the benefit of not having a lot of other things to do. It's so easy to just watch kids stare at their phones, and I'm guilty of it at times too, but there wasn't much else to do. So you just
Yeah.
did that. And so for me, the name was a no-brainer, only thing I thought of.
Right.
And it embodies, the phrase that I use a lot, old school work ethic, new school methods. It's a different time than it was when I was growing up, but it doesn't mean the work ethic has to change.
Yeah, and you've built a culture there with the driveway where it seems like there's a lot of kids buying into that philosophy,
Yeah,
right?
I try
Where
to talk to
they're
kids like there aren't shortcuts. I mean, there's certain physical gifts that help in basketball. Yes, you might not have those, and there's zero control over whether I have them or not. So,
yeah,
what am I going to do to make the team? What am I going to do to make the A team? What am I going to do to make the varsity? What am I going to do to play in college? What am I going to, and then it's just a matter of commit to it and spend the time. And
yeah,
the cool thing with the way our facility is designed too, with those shooting cages, like shooting is one of those skills in basketball where it's just 100% on you. Like there isn't other factors really. Like you want to be a good shooter. I tell kids every day when I work with kids, and there's three parts to shooting specifically. There's technique, which we're going to work on. There's repetition, which is 100% your job. Don't blame anybody else. Get out. For
yep,
me, it was in my driveway, even at a park. It was on a Nerf hoop in my bedroom. I spent really lot of time by myself in the basement,
yeah,
shooting into a garbage can. We had a New
yeah,
York Jets garbage can for some dumb reason. I have no idea why it was a New York Jets. It was just probably got it at a garage sale or something. But I would shoot a Nerf ball into that, on the floor, behind the pool table, and that was a three. And I can't tell you how much I did that.
yeah. Games with yourself. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, just over and over and over. So yeah, it's the technique, the repetition, and then the confidence. And how do you get confidence in a skill? You get better at that skill by practicing. And then your confidence comes because you've just put in so much time. There's no other option.
Yeah, and that can correlate easily to your spiritual life, like spiritual formation. You can call it discipleship, sanctification. It's all the little things stacked up over time that helps you get to where you want to be. You know, I don't know who came up with the quote, but I like it. It's this idea of if someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I wanna do this big thing. I wanna have this title or this position." The first thing they need to do is learn how to wash dishes for mom. You know, learn the things that you don't necessarily love. Learn how to grind well, how to work hard, and trust the process over the long haul. When you look back on your basketball career, how important were those little things that you worked on versus like these huge dreams or huge ideas you had about what your future was going to look like? Could you unpack that a little bit for me, bro?
Yeah, I think the first thing that kind of comes to mind for me in that is almost, fast forwarding to college. I think in, growing up, grade school, high school, I was always one of, if not the best player. And I was a good athlete. I wasn't an off the charts athlete, but I was a good athlete. But then you get to college and it's very humbling. I was the worst athlete on my team. I was the worst player on my team as a freshman, and it was tough because you're not who you were. Then all of a sudden for me, it was an injury that took me out for a year, and now your identity is totally different. So it was definitely a time of struggle, a time of like learning, but then you embrace your role, so my role in college was very different than what it was growing up. And it's hard for people to have different roles because you just don't know anything different. So once I embraced that role, then I could thrive in that role. And I see that as a parent too. There's times you want certain things for your kids and for whatever reason, those things change or they're different or whatever. And then you embrace, this is who I have. I want to be thankful. And man, I couldn't be more proud of my kids, no matter if they play basketball or not. They're individuals, and it's not me trying to live through them. It's their life, and I'm going to support them, and I just couldn't be more proud of them.
Yeah, and we'll get to that a little bit. This idea of goal setting and how that relates to our kids, because I'm in a similar boat. Younger kids, but still wanting them to be goal oriented for themselves, whatever that may be, and then encourage them in that process. When you came to Christ, it was in your college years, I think, towards maybe the end of your college years. How did basketball fit into that? You were already playing, you were already at a high level. How was goal setting and your basketball career impacted by you coming to Christ? And how does that affect you now and what you do with the Driveway? I mean, I know it's not like you're not labeling it as a ministry, but you have influence. And how has basketball correlated with your spiritual life, Ryan?
Well, I was raised in a family where faith was really important, and I think that certainly was the foundation for me. In college, it started to look a little different for me just because it became my own thing, and it wasn't my parents' faith. It like for everyone, it has to become your own, and that looks different for everybody. So, and that, that was an important thing for me to go through and understand it myself and understand what does it mean to me to be a Christian, to be a follower of Christ, and so that was a good struggle to go through. And so then as an athlete, it changed things a little bit. There was a bigger picture. Like I said, the identity thing was very hard for me because it was all about sports for a long time. And then my first year of college, I wasn't playing just because I wasn't good enough. I was just the last guy on the bench. And then my second year, I might have played a little bit if I wasn't hurt, but I had a couple of surgeries and had to redshirt. So now I'm not even barely on the team, basically. You're not practicing, you're in the pool rehabbing, you're not suited up. I mean, the low point for me, and I still have a picture of this, and I've spoken about it and showed this picture, that we made the NCAA tournament my sophomore year. I was redshirted, which means, you can't play in the games, But towards the end of the season, I was healthy enough to practice. So I practiced maybe the last month. And at the NCAA tournament first round game, they only have a certain amount of chairs on the bench, and you can't go more than that. And for some reason, our team physician decided he wanted to sit on the bench for that game. He'd never sat on the bench before, and that took my spot. So I had to sit in the stands. And to go from a guy who was all about his identity as an athlete in high school to literally in the stands, not even on the bench with the team.
Yeah.
And I have a picture of it from the TV. I took a picture of the TV and remember, like, okay, this is literally like a turning point in my life. Like, because at that same time I was struggling with these spiritual things of, is this my faith? Is it my parents? What does it look like? Is it different? Is it the same? Is it, so it was a hard thing to go through, but at the time it was a good thing looking back for sure, because, my identity, who I am, doesn't have to be in whether I make shots or
totally,
anything like that. So there's more to it. And not that that stuff became less important to me. It just got added into a bigger picture. And so that was really, like I said, a tough time, but very helpful. And that was a pivotal moment. I mean, maybe a turning point in my entire life, seeing, a perspective change. Like, I'm not on the bench. Not only not in the uniform on the court, I'm not even on the bench.
Right.
So you better have a different identity, because things are going to change eventually, And then, from a goal setting standpoint, like in the driveway and everything, like, I look at what I do, no matter what I'm doing, I want to have an impact. For me, it always comes down to having an impact. I've had all these great experiences in my life through sports, through friends, family, having great parents like that have done the right thing for me for a long time and given me a great example. Like, I want to make sure I'm faithful with that. To whom much is given, much is expected. Like that.
Yes.
That weighs heavy on me in a good way. I talk to my kids about that. Like, to whom much is given, much is expected. So my job is to impact, because I was given much. I want to share that, whatever that looks like, to a kid, and sometimes it's just basketball. Sometimes it's, it's life. Sometimes it's spiritual. It really doesn't matter what setting I'm in, whether it was when I worked at a church or somewhere else. But I knew the various jobs I've had, if I wasn't able to have an impact, it was tough. It was not for me. And so very fortunate.
So it's not just about the basketball.
Gosh, no.
Strictly. It's basketball gives you a platform for influence and
an impact. Yep.
Yeah. I've seen this in ministry, and you've been in ministry in church environments. Sometimes Christians struggle. They struggle with this idea of having goals or goal setting, because they're afraid that the goals they have might not align with God's will or God's purpose. How can you help us understand that it's okay to think long term, to have strategy, to have goals, and to aim for it, knowing that God could move that, change that, close that door, open different doors? Have you wrestled with that in your life, Ryan? Like, how do you get over that hump of fear and move towards what you feel God has wired you to do?
Well, I think, you can get caught up in like being stagnant and saying, "Oh, I'm just going to wait for God to do something in my life," And but if you're following Him on a daily basis, you're probably pretty close to in line with His Spirit, and so it's not like you're way off in the distance now, and suddenly you're going to, I'm going to do this, but So I mean, certainly I remember a time when I thought I applied for a job, I thought I was perfect for it. And this was years ago. And I thought, this is such a no-brainer. Like, I knew the guy that was hiring. I thought it was just, like, I was convinced this is God's will. Didn't even get an interview. And I was taken aback. I was like, what the heck? I totally thought this was just, God's plan, and this was going to happen. And then sure enough, it didn't. It took me a little while, and then great things came after that, for me and for our family, and so I don't think I ever really got down on it. It definitely took a little while. I definitely was like, wait a minute, I thought this was the deal. I thought this was perfect.
Right.
But looking back, yeah, that might have gone well if I did get that, but this other thing has gone well too. And I don't know that there's like
Hmm.
that specific plan, because what is it? Is it God's plan? Is it my plan? But if I'm just following him as a leader in my life, and
Yeah.
it, it's just going to do this, and you just go with it, you know. And
It's going to
I
come
never thought,
together, man.
I certainly never thought I was going to be doing what I was doing right now.
Yeah.
I certainly never thought I would work at a church. You know, those weren't life goals at all.
Yeah. I mean, when I got married, I told Jen, I don't want to be a pastor. He's got a sense of humor, man.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. What patterns or disciplines have you had to set up in your life, Ryan, to accomplish the goals that you have? Are there a couple of things that have become like non-negotiables for you? So like thinking about your second, driveway location, is there a thought process on how am I going to get this done? How am I going to accomplish this? Are there a few things, a few nuggets that you have integrated into your life now that help you make those decisions, help you get to where you want to be?
Well, I think the big change for me is like for a long time, both when I worked at the church with you and when I started the driveway, it was just, I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out and do it. I'm not inherently a good delegator. I'm a doer. And that works, but it doesn't work oftentimes long term or for expansion. It works to get the job done, to, maybe build something up. How do I then think long term with it? So I've had to really work on delegation, building up and training other people, and just frankly, I'm just not good at it. But I'm aware that I'm not good at it, so I got to be conscious of it. And I'm still probably too involved in things, but at the same time, like for this Wausau expansion has been a good example. I got a great guy named Sam that's running it.
Nice.
And part of the reason for putting it there was knowing, okay, it's an hour and a half away. I can't just go there and do it. Like meaning I can't run both, certainly. And I can't, even if Sam's having an issue or something comes up, I can't just drive over there really quick. If it was
Right.
in Appleton, if it was 20, 25 minutes down the road, I probably could do that. So I didn't look for that. I looked for something that was just far enough away that made sense, obviously from a business standpoint. Where was there a need in the community? But then the distance there is enough that I can go and be involved and help out. But at the same time, it's not just me doing more. And same thing happened with when we made the expansion in 2019 of the driveway. So I'm going to get out of the sun here. When I made the expansion there, it was, okay, how can we grow without me just doing more of what I'm already doing? There weren't any more hours in the day to do more. So I had to come up with a concept that made sense. And that took some time. And the easy thing would have been just, okay, add another gym and do more stuff. As opposed to being smarter about how we did it and then opening up a chance for more impact, which has been really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when we think about goals and dreams we have, God often involves other people in the process to make it fly. And if we've got a death grip on that all the time, man, I don't know how sustainable that would be. And so learning to give it away, man, that's a process. And I would imagine it's kind of your baby. It's your vision. Now that you realize that, man, I bet you it gives you a little bit of sense of relief that this thing can grow despite me, despite my urges to want to step in and run it. And it gives you an opportunity to get good people in and grow them, and you get to share the vision. You get to share how excited you are about the driveway with the folks that work for you, which is awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm definitely not good at it. But I'm aware of it. There's certain things, other things in life I know I'm not good at, but I'm aware of it. So either you fill those gaps with people that are really good at whatever it is you're not good at, or you learn. I had no idea how to run a business or even start a business. I mean, I literally, like, you would laugh if you listen to the questions I had to ask people in the searches that I did on Google on how to run a business. I just had no concept. I was a biology major who worked at a church. What the heck do I know about running a business? And so but you figure it out. That was where okay, I'm just going to put my head down and figure it out and work really, really
Yeah.
hard until it happens. But then,
Yeah.
and that works, like I said, for a certain time, and it could work forever. But, when I decided that my vision for this thing is, 4 or 5 of these driveways across the state, I can't do that by myself. There's no way. So how do I get there? I got to find the right people, probably number one. In business, there's systems. You got to have systems in place. Again, not a strength of mine is figuring out systems, but I have an assistant who's great at systems, and she thinks like that. So you just kind of learn and grow, and the vision thing.
Yeah.
I learned from your previous guest, Pastor Episcopo. I learned about vision a lot. I didn't feel like I was ever somebody who had vision. Goals, yeah, goals to me were more like, okay, that's a thing, I can go get it. Vision is this bigger thing that might not be exactly what you set for the goal. Like for me, in basketball, it was Division One college. Vision is, I'm going to use basketball to impact people. What in the world? That's way bigger than a specific goal that I can go in the driveway and spend 2 hours a day working on my shot to get to that goal. Vision is a whole different thing, involves a lot more people. And
Yeah.
Dennis was great at that, and still is, I'm sure. And it just, I felt like I learned a ton about that. So, and still learning.
Well, and me too,
Yeah.
with vision and casting vision at Rocky and looking 10, 15 years down the line. I think what the cool thing, and I just preached on when Jesus fed the 5,000, and the disciples are clamoring for the people to go back to the villages. It's late, they're hungry. Jesus says, no, let them stay here, like you feed them. And they bring these measly 2 baskets to Jesus, like what they have to accomplish the vision. The vision is feeding the people. There's probably 10,000 of them with women and children. And it struck me this last week as I was sermon prepping for this, that sometimes all Jesus needs from us is just what we have. It's measly. We don't know how it's going to get done, but we give it to him, and it's his job to multiply the things that he's ingrained in us. And I think it's just daily being faithful, plodding away, working hard, owning, taking responsibility for where you feel God wants you to go. And I want to help Christians just be encouraged with that idea that whatever you have, whether you think it's feeble or great, bring it to him and let him do what he wants with it. And I think it's cool to watch your progression, Ryan, over the years in the passion that you have for making an impact, using basketball as the vehicle, making an impact and watching. Like, it's cool from afar to watch this whole thing grow and develop, and the reach that you have with young people.
Yeah. One thing
It's amazing.
I've learned, from good mentors. I've had good mentors. I always bring up a guy named Jeff Trickey, who's a quarterback coach and still working, still teaching quarterbacks, but teaching them how to be leaders. And I remember going to his camps and hearing stories. I don't remember all the technique stuff, but I remember stories. And so I've really tried hard to make sure that telling a story is part of what I do, whether it's at a summer camp or even in the last 1 minute of a session with a kid. Tonight, I'll have 4 groups of kids tonight. I'll tell a little story that might take 30 seconds, but it might have an impact on a kid. And in relating basketball to life through that story, because kids listen to stories, people listen to stories. They don't listen to facts and details. They want to be entertained to a degree. But and I think of Joe White, I was able to spend good close time with Joe White with Kanakuk camps. Joe has a huge impact on me because he's such a good storyteller. And so,
Yes.
I make sure that whatever I'm doing, there's a story to it. And how does this half an hour, 4 hours that you spent with me, how does this play into your story of who you're going to become, maybe as a basketball player, but more importantly as a human? And then I go back to my life and all the really unique opportunities that I had specifically, from, I'd say, I don't know, all along. I've just been able to now look back on those things and say, what's the story I learned out of that? What's the lesson I learned out of that part of my life, that part of my story? How can I share that with kids and make an impact with it? And, people always like, oh, you've had so many experiences. And that's, for me, that's where I go back to whom much is given, much is expected. Because I've had all these experiences, and even still, I feel like I'm having them. How do I use those, turn them into a story that a kid can understand and be inspired by? And You know,
Yeah.
I'm certainly not going to make any kid a really good basketball player, but I can inspire them just like I was inspired by people like Tony Bennett and, Joe White and Jeff Trickey
Yeah.
and my high school coaches and college coaches to like take whatever thing I'm in, whatever part of life I'm in as a dad, as a boss, as an employee, embrace that role and do it to the best of my ability.
That's awesome. So let's talk parenting just quickly here. Say, you know, 10 years ago, your oldest comes to you and says, "Hey, Dad, I have this goal. I want to work at it." What do you tell him? What are a few nuggets that you would have for parents who have kids that, they're learning how to work, they're learning how to set goals? What kind of advice would you have for a parent? Because I know you work with a lot of parents too. It's not just kids. There's a lot of conversations I'm sure you're having with parents in relationship with the goals that their kids have. What's some advice you would give parents in that situation, Ryan?
Well, I think, and I've learned this too, I think like it has to be the kids' goal. It has to be their thing at some point. When our kids are young, all of their decisions are made by us. And then and even through 8th grade, I see this a lot in basketball because when they're in youth basketball, it's a couple times a week. The parents handle signing them up for things with me and at my facility. Like the parents handle all that. And then the kids get to high school and the parents aren't involved as much anymore. They want to be sometimes, but
Yeah.
they're the property then of their high school coach as far as basketball is related. So the
Yes.
high school coach sets the schedule. High school coach determines the amount of gym time, all that kind of thing. And so that's a really hard thing for a lot of parents. And they went from total control to very little. And then the struggle is then if the goal or if the vision for the career or whatever, if it was the parents, it drops like a rock because it's not the kids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the kids that I see that are successful at some point in their youth journey, they've transitioned from this was my parents' thing to my thing. And
Yeah.
when it becomes their thing, that's when they can take off. And the parents can set them up really well for all that. And then, but at some point, I think it has to be the kid's goal. And I've seen that with my own sons.
Yeah.
I see it. I'm going to a scholarship signing ceremony for a girl that by far I've spent the most time with of any kid at the driveway, and she's signing a Division I scholarship for a Big Ten school tomorrow night, and asked me to be a part of it. And for a
Nice.
long time, I would say it was her dad's vision, and then
Yeah.
about 8th grade, that probably changed, and it became hers. And Dad was there. Dad supported. Mom supported. They were there, but it had to become hers at some point. Otherwise, there's frustration. There's
Totally.
a little bit of this, and sometimes there's some of that anyway. But the cool part is when it becomes the kids, because then, in my experience, like with my kids, yes, they have a gym that they can go to anytime they want. But
Right.
when my senior Bryce, when he was 5th, 6th, 7th grade, we would go in the mornings, and I wouldn't ever say, "Hey, Bryce, get in the car, we're going." Hey, I would just throw it out there. Do you want to go to the driveway in the morning before school? And he would have the decision to say yes or no. Now
Yeah.
I don't have to put that out there. He's going to go, and his brother comes with, and now his brother goes on his own, and so it's not me. Guys, get in the car. Let's go. We're going to go to the gym. And then it's like, where are the guys? Oh, they're at the gym. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Because I know that that's going to have value as a human later in life beyond high school basketball and football or whatever it is, track or whatever. It's going to have value because they're going to go to their job someday and it's not going to be a good day and things aren't going to look fun. And well, I'm just going to do it anyway because that's what I got to do,
Yeah. How do you, 2 more questions for you. How do you take that mentality and transfer it to spiritual life? I mean, there's so much overlap there.
Yep, for sure. And
Right?
I think it's exactly the same.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It as parents, we want to set the table for them. We want them to understand certainly our faith. I know for Melissa and I, our faith is very similar, I would say.
Yeah.
And we don't force it on the kids. We don't make them get up and go to church. But
Yep.
I found the other day, it was super cool. I was like, one of my favorite moments I think I've had as a parent. We're in the midst of this playoff run for sports and for football, and both of my senior and sophomore both are playing on the team, and my senior was injured, so he hadn't played for a couple weeks, and it was frustrating. And is he going to end his football career without even being on the field? And it was the morning. He has like a first hour study hall, so he doesn't have to go in. And I was sitting here on the couch, I think, in the morning, and I couldn't find him. And I was like, well, I don't think he left. Where did he go? And all of a sudden, like 5 minutes later, he comes in off of our porch, which is where I usually have my devotional time, my quiet time. He comes in off the porch, and I was like, what were you doing out there? He goes, I was just doing a devotional. And I was like, okay, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Because
that's a big win.
Yeah, and he sees me sitting out there doing that probably, and
yes,
that was totally his thing, and it's his faith now. And we've had some conversations about this. Like, his faith is his thing with choosing college. He wanted to make that a part of the decision, and that wasn't us sitting down saying, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to go to this school, we got to make sure we got this going on. Like, that's really cool as a parent to see them, whatever thing they want, make it their own. Now you feel like you've set the table for them. Now they got to do the rest, right?
That's right. That's right. And I mean, that's great multiplication. That's discipleship, and that's setting a spiritual goal for them down the road to own and work on, and they have to take the initiative, which is great. Sorry
to interrupt, but like for us, when I started the driveway, and when Melissa kind of took over her family business, she was working in it for a long time, but then she took over and is now the owner and CEO. Like, we knew that was going to be hard. We knew, like, schedule wise, it was going to be ridiculous. I work basically 1 to 10 o'clock at night. She works all day, and then, like, it's crazy, like most parents. But we kind of consciously knew this is going to set an example for our kids, and how we handle that craziness, how we handle communication, how we handle our marriage is going to set an example, because they're watching, whether they know it or not. They're watching, just like I watched my parents. And that example we set is going to be way more important than anything we say. And I know that some people don't like that, be Jesus with skin on, and the whole thing about, like, preach the gospel, and if you have to use words. I love that. And I know some people don't agree with that, but to me, in the world I live in right now with 3 teenage sons, that matters.
Yes. Yeah. And they're wrestling with questions, but they're watching you. And a lot of times how you act and function and talk is providing an answer for them, and for them to start, diving in on their own is a big deal. And that's awesome, because there's a balance there. I mean, you've got sports, you've got family, you've got your walk with the Lord. Modeling how you do that well, and all those responsibilities is a big deal. And I know as a parent, I feel the weight of that, with 3 kids too. So,
and there's something I came up with, and I think about this every morning. When I read a book years ago that talked about, challenging you to smile, the first thing you do every morning. And I think of the name of the book is The Happiness Advantage. And so I was like, that's dumb. Come on. Is that really a thing? And I talk about this a lot at the driveway. No, it actually is a thing. Like, when I started doing it, it was really hard. And there's certainly days where it's hard, but I've kind of coupled that habit of smiling first thing I wake up in the morning with then saying, be a rock, ROC. And that ROC stands for regardless of circumstances. So it's easy for me to wake up on a Friday morning that I don't have to work, and my kids are playing in a playoff football game, and like, this is going to be a great day, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's hard to wake up on a Wednesday when you got a really hard day at work and something's not going to go well and your body's sore, and say, regardless of circumstances, I'm going to smile. And so that thing is really changed my perspective on a lot of things. Like, regardless of circumstances, God loves me. Boom.
Yeah.
I should be able to smile.
I mean, it's like Paul, right? Count it all joy, all the junk, because that helps you get to the finish line. Right? That helps us run the race well that God has appointed for us. And so when we think of goal setting, I would imagine you're going to have more hard days than great days to get to where you want to be.
and you're not always at the goal. The goal might be here, whatever that goal is. If it's small, if it's big, you're not at the goal. So it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm not there. I'm a failure. I'm not quite to it yet." But
Yeah.
regardless of circumstances, I'm going to give thanks. I'm going to be grateful for where I am today, and I just put my head down and keep going. And that goal, that target might change, like we talked about earlier, where God says, "Well, no, that job that you thought you were perfect for, you're not going to get an
Right.
interview. We're going to take you somewhere else." And
Right.
okay, all right,
Okay.
okay, I'm good now. Let's go.
Man, totally. And I've seen that in my own life a lot too, brother. And, well, I appreciate you hanging with me today. We got to figure out a time when we can chase trout again on the Big T or somewhere, man, out west. So
I might be out there.
I know you need that itch. You need to scratch that at least twice a year.
Oh, and I didn't get out either this. Well, we went out this summer, but I didn't get. Normally, the last 3 years, I've been able to go out west in the spring and the end of the summer at the end of my busy season. And this year, it just didn't work out. So yeah, I feel like I'm due a couple of trips, couple extra trips. So one of them might be to the T.
Well, somewhere, buddy. We'll connect. But I appreciate you, man. I value your friendship, and look forward to seeing how God continues to use you and the vision that you have. And it's exciting, brother.
I gotta say, I'm proud of you too, man. Thinking about I remember I was driving, I was getting on Highway 41, and I'm trying to talk to you about being a cafe manager at this church, and
Yeah.
and like, you were willing to do it, and to for both of us, I think it made sense, and I'm like, it's definitely not the goal, but
No.
it was like a first step in the process, maybe, right? And the goal might even not even been what you're doing now, but it really cool to see, like, how your progression has gone and your family and all that kind of thing. So I just wish you guys were closer, but
I know, bud. I know. Well, we'll connect, and appreciate you, man. Thanks for jumping on the Valley Run podcast, and we'll be knee deep in a river soon enough, brother.
let's go.
We will.
Let's go. All right, buddy. Great talking to you.
All right. You too. See ya.
See ya.